we are live in a living color from Scimitar Studios in Denville, New Jersey. You're listening live to the Open Mic program right here on Blog Talk Radio, your home for the Open Mic program, as we are now into the Sports Talk Nation here on this Friday evening on St. Patrick's Day, as it is March 17th. So happy St. Patrick's Day to all those out there who indeed celebrate it. We've got a good show for you today, as we will continue our spring training tour, and we will just talk about the Chicago Cubs. The Chicago Cubs, the defending World Series champions, who won a World Series last year for the first time in 108 years. They snapped that long skid of losing and are no longer baseball's lovable losers. Instead, the Chicago Cubs, going into this 2017 season, will be the hunted instead of being the hunter. And that is a position that they are not used to at all at this point at all during their long history, as they are trying to find a way to repeat as World Series champions and be the first team in Major League Baseball since the 1999 and 2000 New York Yankees to repeat as world champions, and that's what they're going to try to do this year. Joining us over the phone lines, as always, when we talk about Chicago sports, and particularly with the Chicago Cubs, is Robert Villarreal from Baseball Essential. Robert, of course, joined us a lot last year when the Cubs made their run to the World Series, and somewhere he is getting ready to have a ring for a World Series ring fitted onto his fingers, I'm sure. So, Rob, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm great, Mike. How you doing? Yeah, we can all hope and dream.
Seriously, before we get into the season here for this year, well, I know we didn't really get much of a chance at the end when the Cubs won the World Series to talk about this on the air. But what was that moment like? Because everyone who's watched YouTube, watched the game afterwards, saw all the fans of Chicago going crazy, saw all the fans outside Wrigley Field, putting their hands up in the air and had their cell phones clicking all at the same time. What was that moment like for yourself and whoever else you were celebrating that moment with at that time?
It was. I didn't put my hands up in the air. It was more of a Tiger Woods fist pump, but it was absolute just elation. I can't. I've been able to. I've been around long enough to see the Chicago Bears win. I've seen the Bulls win. I've seen the Blackhawks win. I've seen the White Sox win, and this one I just haven't until a couple months ago, and it was just fantastic. Just the sheer joy, even people who weren't fans were rooting for him, and just to see something so long-lived, and to people not only, feel the gratification of a victory, not only for themselves, but past loved ones. Like for myself, my grandfather, who he lived in Cicero, a little suburb of Chicago, and we go over there about one weekend a month and see my mom's family, and then Sunday we'd see my dad's family, and go over there on a Saturday afternoon, and almost always, he's sitting there on the couch, and he's got the Cubs on, and whether it was watching Ron Cey or Sandberg or anyone else, that was that was part of the joy, is being able to share that with your family and kind of pass that joy on down through generations. And even though I did the same thing, even though my dad is still a White Sox fan, you'll still get to share that. But to be able to celebrate not only for yourself but for others, whether they were still here or not, was just fantastic. And every time I see a video clip or a highlight, it doesn't matter if it's on TV, on CSN, on YouTube, I can't explain the goosebumps. It's just an amazing feeling, and I love it every single time.
Absolutely. I think you couldn't have put it any better way than what you just did right there. And for the Chicago Cub fan like yourself, and for the others out there in Chicago, and really all across the country for that matter, and there are a lot of Chicago Cub fans all across the country, that moment and the way they came back in that World Series, and look, let's give a lot of credit to the Indians because they played a great series in that World Series and had a chance to win it on several different occasions. For the way the Cubs came back and won that series, it really went down, and it's going to go down as probably one of the greatest World Series comebacks ever, for that matter. Being down 3-1 in the series, the stakes that were involved, the two teams, considering the history of the two teams. It was just tremendous, tremendous theater. And as I look ahead to this season, just in a general impression of what I see from the Cubs coming into this year, I find it hard to believe that this team doesn't have enough to not repeat. Not saying that they will repeat, not saying they won't repeat, but on paper right now, they look like a team that could easily go out there and repeat as World Series champions. And at the same token, I could say the same thing about Cleveland, maybe getting back to the World Series themselves. So maybe we're in for a rematch, 7-8 months from now. But as of right now, this team looks really, really ready to be primed and ready to go for another big run here in 2017. What are your general impressions going in?
Well, it doesn't look like they've really lost a step. As far as projections, I know Pacoda had them ranked first last year, and I think they won one more game than Pacoda guessed at, and this year Pacoda's ranking them second, right below the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I think they're expecting the Dodgers to have like one or two more wins or something of that nature, but still, second in the NL and second overall in the MLB, so that's not a bad ranking. It looks like they're firing on all cylinders. It doesn't look like. Part of it, I think, because they played so long. They basically played into November.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't had a lot of time off, but they have had sufficient time to rest and recuperate and vacation. A couple players like Chris Bryant married. Things like you're able to live your life outside of baseball, and for anyone who watches a 162-game season, that's really all they can do is live baseball. Everyone involved, whether it's coaches or trainers or broadcasters, you're traveling, 6, 7, 8 months out of the year, and you're never really home. So it's good that they got to be home for at least a little bit. But I think it's also a bonus in that they took enough time off to rest and recuperate and heal some wounds. But at the same time, they didn't have long enough off to, just lose the muscle memory, just kind of forget what they were doing. Not that everyone does that season to season, but it absolutely looks like they didn't take a day off. They're hitting very well. They're pitching. Yeah, you're not going to win every game in preseason, but it's preseason. Whatever. You're there to work out the kinks and see the prospects like William Jimenez, who just got sent down today to the minors for the major league camp. But that's really all it's for, because when you look at the Cubs, who's going to be at first base. Who's going to be at second. Who's going to be at third. And, you already know who the opening day starter is in John Lester. So it's not really a matter of knowing where the starters are going to be and what they're going to do. But at the same time, sometimes, they do come in. They're a little slumpy over the spring. Like even last year, Rizzo wasn't hitting that well over the spring, but, a week or so in the season really turned it on. So it's really great to see that they're not really missing a beat. And it gives a lot of promise to what I'm hoping is another fantastic season for the Cubs.
Yeah. And, for the first time, this team, and I'll get your impression of this as well, from a fan standpoint, but for the first time, really, in anyone's memory for that matter, this team's going to have the bullseye in its back. And I'll be very curious to see, and we'll all be very curious to see how this team handles being the hunted rather than being the hunter. And I think that's what goes right to Joe Maddon and how he can get his team primed and ready and for this upcoming season. One of the things that I remember him saying as spring training began was not necessarily take it easy, but just pace yourself. It's been a very short off season, as you just illustrated just a while ago. Short off season after winning the World Series in November. And while there's a lot of excitement getting ready for another season, and maybe even a little bit of pressure as well, knowing that they are the world champions, they still got to go out there and just play the game as they would normally, and can't really worry about the outside distractions that the media will try to drum up, that the fans are going to certainly talk about over the course of the year. And we all know, during the course of a 162-game season, there's going to be a couple slumps here and there. You're going to have a 3-game losing streak in the middle of June. That's inevitable. It's going to happen at some point. But this team just has to find a way through Maddon, through this coaching staff, and also the experience that they have gained over the last couple of years, from their run to the NLCS against the Mets in 2015 to their run to the championship last year. And that's really what's going to have to carry them through this year let alone health. That aside, of course, but that's going to be the most important thing going throughout this year is going to be their ability to manage this situation throughout. And I think also from the Cubs fan perspective, it's going to be interesting to see how the fan reacts this year, because the fan's always been that, kind of had that oh shucks kind of mentality, I guess, in a lot of ways for the Cubs. It's been kind of the mentality for a number of years where they were hoping they would win, hoping that good things would come, and wouldn't be surprised if the team did not win at all. But now the expectation, I guess, is a little bit different, and maybe even a sense of relief in a lot of ways for Cubs fans going into this year. You can fill in the blanks right there for me, because obviously I'm here from the East Coast. You wouldn't know that feeling a little better than I would.
Yeah, all I can say from a fan's perspective, at least me, it's hard for me to look at like a fan. I mean, I am a fan. I am a Cubs fan, but I also, as a writer, I try and look at everything very, objectively. I try and see the whole board rather than just what I want to see, and I really try not to let out my my inner meatball,
Mm-hmm.
And I think the hardest thing for a lot of Chicago fans is understanding that it is baseball, and that what happened last season with the Cubs was really just a very magical, special, spectacular occurrence that has happened for other teams, and for other teams a lot, like the Yankees in the 90s, for instance. Or, teams like, Cincinnati, how good they were in the 80s. But,
Mm-hmm.
To realize that they started super hot. I mean, the Cubs won something like 20 or 21 out of the first 22 games last season to start, and then they lost 2 games in the first month, and then they went on like another 3-week tear. And it was just immense. But you have to understand that they're also very lucky injury-wise. They didn't have a lot of problems with that. Yeah, something occurred occasionally, like with Dexter Fowler. But for the most part, they were very, very lucky. And you're right, a lot of that credit has to go to Joe Maddon, who has always managed it, saying that, this is paid a lot of money to play a sport, but it's still just a job. You're doing this so that you can do whatever else you want to do when you're not here. And he doesn't want anyone to take it so seriously that they get burnt out on it. He doesn't want them to be after 30 days like, I can't hit the cages. They get inside their own heads. And that's why, I'm certain that this year, just like last year, he's gonna close the batting cages. He's not gonna let anyone come to the park 4 hours early. I'm sure there will be still standard things like, pitching comes out here, we'll have BP here, and that sort of thing. But just having people relax and take it easy, and understanding that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And I know that's kind of an old cliche, but it's absolutely true that you have to pace yourself, because you don't want to be burnt out by 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, because you're burnt out by 90 days, you still have another 90 to go.
Yeah. And
to be able to manage that, not only manage, another man's time, but the time of, 25 men, their personalities, and also what they want to do, but what you want to accomplish is really, it takes a really special person to do it. And I'm not saying Joe Maddon's the only man to do it, but he's learned to master it very, very well. And I think that's going to, again, help in the long run as far as, the players go and their well-being, and not only their physical health, but their mental health. Because that's very, very important. It doesn't matter whether it's baseball or football or anything else. It can't just be the only thing you do all the time. It's just going to eat you alive. It's just like you or me, or even what we do in our everyday lives. You can't just do that one thing all the time. You go to work, and maybe you enjoy your job, and that's awesome, but you still do that so you can also partake in all the other things you want to do in life. You need to be able to take time to enjoy your family and enjoy your kids and enjoy your free time, or just be able to get up on your off day and sip coffee and on your back porch. And that's really important too, because when you do that, everything's going to come together properly for the length of the season, and it's all going to work out. And that's, at the same time, that's something that a Cubs fan has to look at and be able to see, because like I said a couple minutes ago, it was, they just ran right out of the gates, just, 110%, and they were hitting everything full throttle and just pitching great and hitting great and won so many games in the first 2 months. I wasn't sure if it was real.
Right.
But you just got to realize that it's still a game. You're going to have teams that aren't doing good and they're going to pick it up, or that are doing good, they're going to sputter out. Like the Nationals puttered out in the end last year, or other teams like the Giants who started kind of flat, but then at the halfway point ended up like one game above the Cubs at the All-Star break. So you never really know how it's going to work out, and that's just a part of managing the grind and managing your time, because it's a long season. You don't want to get down on guys after a day or a week, or they started 2-8. Well, whatever. There's still 152 games left. So it's really just a long season ahead. But I don't think that anything adverse should happen. We just like any other baseball season, you just gotta be ready, keep an open mind, because like it's 162 games. Anything can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And as long as they keep their health in general for their top players, and I'm talking about the Rizzos, the Russells, the Bryants of the world, the Arrietas, the Lesters. If those guys obviously stay healthy throughout the course of this year, then yes, the Cubs should find their way, you would think, back to the postseason. And you're absolutely right in mentioning some teams, even last year and over the last couple of years, who have either gotten off to sizzling starts and tailed off at the end. Maybe they didn't get off to great starts, tailed off, or picked it up a little later on in the year. One team that I'll just compare, that I'll make draw a little comparison here to, is the 2000 Yankees. The 2000 Yankees were not a great team by any stretch of the imagination, and they only won 87 games in the regular season, and they somehow found a way to get into the playoffs. They just barely got in with Boston in the AL East, and they really weren't expected to do much in the playoffs. Seattle was a better team in the American League and during the regular season. A lot of people wouldn't have been surprised if Seattle won, but the thing with the Yankees is they had that postseason experience and just had that kind of grit and determination once they got there just to keep it going, and they found a way to beat Seattle in the ALCS, and then obviously they beat the Mets in the World Series a couple weeks later. But it just goes to show you really don't need to have the best record in the league in order to get to a World Series. You don't need to have the best record in the league in order to go out there and win a World Series. So for the Cubs and the Cubs fan, if this team wins 95 games or 85 games, obviously 85 games may or may not get you to the playoffs, but the fact is if you're able to get into the playoffs, then you just go from that point on. So it's just really about the journey until that point.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want 90 plus to make the playoffs, but you're absolutely right in that it doesn't matter if you have 103 wins like the Cubs did last year or anything else, because what matters is that you get in. Because if you get in, then you're set. You've went through the door. You're into the next spot, and you can move on. You really start fresh. You're 0-0 again, and you got a 5-game series against whoever it might be, or a 1-game playoff, or anything like that. That'll hopefully pan out for you in the end. But that just goes to what we were just talking about a second ago with long seasons.
Yeah.
That there are going to be ups and downs. And you're absolutely right. There are teams that do good the entire season and just flash out right in the beginning. Plenty of teams go the entire season leading the way and just don't make it past their first round of the playoffs. So you never can tell, but at the same time, that's just kind of the magic of baseball. And that's why I think it's one of the best sports, because it's not like the Patriots, for instance. It's just a great example. They just won. And basically, you're not sure what's going to happen the first couple of games without their starting quarterback, without a presumptive league MVP. But once he's back in there, he's going to go straight through, and that they're just the team to beat. And you can say the same thing about the Cubs, because they won last year and they're defending champs, and maybe they're the team to beat, and everyone's gunning for them. But baseball's a whole different monster, and you just have to attack it in a completely different manner. You can't go head on. You got to be tactical. You got to come at it from the sides, or even double team it. But either way, it's really hard to say exactly what can happen, and that's a really great example of what happens. Coming in, barely making it, beating the Mets in the Subway Series. But in the long run, it's really hard to predict that sort of thing. But that's also, the fun.
Yeah, it is. And looking at this team this year, let's talk about some of the position battles here. I think one of the more interesting aspects about this team going into this year is probably their bullpen, because while they do end up losing a guy like obviously Ronald Chapman, who was their closer last year, I think in a lot of ways their bullpen got a little bit stronger because they go out there, they pick up Urahara from Boston, they sign him to a contract, a 2-year deal. Then they go out there and they're able to get Wade Davis in a trade to close for this team. And look, all respect to Aroldis Chapman and his 100-mile-an-hour fastball and his 95-mile-an-hour slider. Wade Davis is probably by all consideration, probably a better postseason pitcher just based on what he did with Kansas City for a couple of years, and also his comfort level with Joe Maddon in there as well, going back to their days in Tampa Bay. So I think this is a bullpen that has a chance to maybe even be better than last year's bullpen. What about you? What do you think?
I couldn't agree more. And something I heard, and I think it's a really great trivia question that's been going around, is the Cubs have 3 pitchers that have had the final out over the past 3 World Series. In Wade Davis, Montgomery, and Urahara. They each had the last out in their respective World Series over the past 3 years. So I think that's a really neat sort of stat. But that also speaks to how good your bullpen is. I don't think it's possible that Montgomery could be starting, or at least spot starting. It's really hard to say. They haven't really worked out what the last spot's going to be in the pitching rotation yet. Mm-hmm. But you're absolutely right. I mean, you got Strisny, who could be up in AAA to the majors a couple times. Rondon, he's coming off an injury, and he's doing okay. Not great. I mean, he got kind of shelled in the World Baseball Classic a day ago. But, they still got, Pedro Strop and Cahill, Justin Grimm, who I've always loved, Georgia Bulldog guy. He's been just a fantastic pitcher, although they've sent him down once or so. Really just for personnel reasons, but he's always panned out. Carl Edwards Jr., who I absolutely love. I don't think that he's come in once or twice in very difficult situations, especially over the World Series, and maybe people didn't give him enough credit and saying, he's too young, he's too skinny. But I mean, the kid's got amazing control. Mm-hmm. And it's really pinpoint when it's on, and I love watching Carl Edwards. Really, those couple of guys, along with whoever may or may not come up here or there, different in what's needed. And obviously, you're always going to do that: bring a guy up, send a guy down, or sign a guy who got released for whatever reason, because you never know how it's going to work out. Like we said, 162-game season, this guy gets hurt, this guy's on the IR for a little bit, but overall, it is really one of the better bullpens in the league. And offhand, I can't sit here and although, you can mention guys like, I'd love to have the St. Louis closer, or some of that nature. Like, of course, you want someone who's also another, all-star caliber player. But, for the money, for what you got, for what you've brought up, for what you've not only traded for, but built yourself through the minors, and then you pick up someone like Davis or Montgomery or whatnot, it's really just, really very well worked out. And I can't say enough good things about this back in the pitching.
How do you think this may play out for Maddon? Let's just say it's your typical baseball game. Cubs have the lead through 6 innings. We're now getting into the 7th inning, and for whatever reason they decide to go to the bullpen here. Let's just say Lester's thrown 100 pitches at this point. If you are Joe Maddon, what would you do? Would you go Pedro Strop, Urahara, Davis? Would you bring in Edwards and Urahara, then Davis? It's just fascinating to me how he can go about and putting together this bridge. And, of course, I even left out Hector Rondon. You can go there, too. There's so many people that he can go to create a bridge to Wade Davis. It's ridiculous. It really is.
Yeah, or you could sit Davis and go with someone else, or even have Davis, set the table. And that's really the beauty of having so much versatility, just like you do in the hitting side of the lineup. And, you have so many interchangeable parts. You don't have to sit there and say, okay, we're going to go 6 2/3, and this guy has the last third, this guy has the 7th, this guy has the 8th, this guy has the 9th. You could do that, but there's so many interchangeable parts that you don't got to worry about. You could say, well, for instance, like you mentioned Hector Rondon. Hector Rondon always has the 7th inning. Well, he just pitched the last 3 games. Who else are you going to put in? You know what? We don't have a problem putting Cahill in there or Sistrisny or whoever it might be, because they're so good. They don't have to be specialists. You don't have that one lefty that comes in the 8th inning against the lefty, and that's it. He faces 3-4 batters a week. You have guys who can pitch against multiple opponents, regardless of what's going on, regardless of lefty righty, and that's really something special to be able to do that. And overall, I don't really see any reason why he couldn't mix it up like he always has. And then you're going to see him, possibly, well, I don't know the likelihood, but, putting another couple pitchers in the outfield because you've got some tired guys and lots of fresh legs out there. But just the fact that you have so much interchangeability and you don't have to worry about it. And, yeah, you're going to want Wade Davis in the 9th or whatever, but just the fact that you have Earhart that can also do it if Wade Davis needs off. You can also have Rondon do it. You could have Edwards do it. Shoot, Montgomery got the save in the World Series. So it's when you have so many pieces that you can use like that, it almost doesn't really matter because it's just based on the situation rather than, we have to have this guy in the 7th. We have to have this guy doing setup all the time. Anyone can set up. Anyone can close. Anyone can go in for any length of time, any amount of pitchers, different pitchers, lefty, righty, better batting, switch hitter, 8th inning, 9th inning, and that's the best part because as, a Cubs fan, knowing that the other team in that situation is going to have the problem. Your team doesn't have the problem like, oh, who are we going to put in? Joe Madden goes in and says, who don't I put in?
Yeah.
They're the ones that have the problem based on who I put in, not the other way around. And overall, that gives you the advantage in every single game.
It really does, and it also shortens the game. It also puts the Cubs in a situation where if they do find themselves trailing in the game, late in the game, they could go out there, let's just say pressure situation. They have a starter that gets knocked out early, 4th, 5th inning. They have a bullpen that has potentially just shut the game down for the next 4 or 5 innings and allow this offense, which is potent enough as it is, to make a comeback. So there's so many different ways for this Cubs team to win with this bullpen. It just makes them really, really scary. That's why their outlook looks so good going into this season alone.
You're absolutely right because when you look at that, whether it's someone goes out early, Hendricks has a bruise on his pitching thumb or something like that, you got guys in the bullpen, like I said, possibly Montgomery in the bullpen who has started. Sistrisny started. Cahill has started. Grimm was a starter when he came into the league with Texas, and he became a reliever. You just have so many guys who can come in, fill in, and do the job. And whether they go 5 innings or not, or 3 innings, or whatever it might be, that just versatility is the name of the game. Because when you don't have to worry about that sort of thing in the long run, that's just another tool in your toolbox, really. And, like I said, that's something that the other team has to counter rather than you have to worry about handling yourself. Then what's that other team going to do? What you're going to do, and that team that you're facing is the one that's got to worry about it.
What do you think about as far as rotate? Let's talk about rotation for a second. You mentioned before there's still a little bit of a battle going on for that 5th spot. There's talk about Montgomery against Brett Anderson. And as I'm just looking at the numbers, if we just base it on spring training numbers, you would say Montgomery may have a slight edge. But as you said, it's still a very wide open competition for that final spot. I guess the one thing that could give Montgomery an edge is that he is left-handed, and we all know it's always a good thing to have that left-hander in your bullpen or in your starting rotation, I should say. And if you take a look at this Cubs rotation, they are very much top-heavy on right-handed starting pitching, so that alone might give him a slight edge, but it's all about how he's able to impress here in the last 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, and it's you can say top-heavy with righty or whatever it might be, but there are so many teams that don't even have a lefty starting pitcher. or for years didn't have lefties, or some teams even 2 or 3 lefties. It's really just situational, and then, like I said, it's just part of the beauty of the game. Okay, well, we run this guy at second instead of this fella because this guy's better against lefties, and whatever it might be. I think that the only problem, I think, with the situation between Anderson and Montgomery is the fact that, like we've already talked about a little bit, Montgomery is so valuable in the bullpen. And, I think that he would do very good starting. I think that him and Anderson are, as long as Anderson's good and he stays healthy, he's had a little bit of injury issue. But, as long as he can stay healthy, he'll be a very serviceable number 5. But, it's just hard to want to put Montgomery in the rotation, at least in my perspective, because what Montgomery can do with the bullpen, Anderson can't. Not that he can't pitch or anything like that, but it's, as you've seen as a baseball fan or even a lot of people, it's a whole different beast coming out of the bullpen. It's about timing and preparation and warming up differently and, having to pitch multiple days in a row rather than just once every couple. And at the same time, there was talk of even going to a 6-man rotation just to rest guys up. But it's really hard to say, you're going to have Lester and then Arrieta and then, whether it goes Lackey, Hendricks, or Hendricks, Lackey, that really doesn't matter, although I think Hendricks has earned the number 3 in my eyes. The number 5 can be tricky, but it's so interchangeable because there are times where, you're going to have, we get a scheduled 2-3 days off. Well, all right, we're not just going to make our number 1, number 2 guys sit for 7 or 8 days. We're going to skip the number 5. We're going to go back to the 1, to the 2. So, having someone like that interchangeable and at the same, like I said, if you have Montgomery in the 5, you got to sit him a little bit, just use him out of the bullpen. It works out perfectly. I think that's really the only sort of quarrelish issue that Madden could have there is just, when you got a guy so good out of the bullpen, you want to let him start because really that's the goal of a lot of players. No one goes in to their baseball career saying, I hope I could be a middle reliever that pitches for 2/3 of an inning, every other week.
Yeah.
But, everyone wants to start, but at the same time, I would assume, and, from talking to a couple of these guys myself, they're professionals and, they'll do what they need to win because really when it comes down to it, would you rather, be the guy who starts 30 games or would you rather, pitch in 50 or 60 and get another ring?
Yeah.
So I think in the long run they'll do what they have to do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're 100% right there. And, it's all about the team. When you end up on a team like this that has a chance to go back to back and be the first team in literally 17 years to do so, it's all about going out there and just, playing for the team, playing for the name on the front of the jersey, if you will, and going out there and putting forth a good effort. Just the fact that the Cubs have the ability to mix and match even just a little bit with the bottom of their rotation in the number 5 spot isn't a bad thing at all. As you just illustrated before, you can even extend the rotation to a 6-man rotation. You can move guys around in that 5th spot. You can call a couple of guys up over the course of the year. Now, obviously, I understand you never want to have a continuous. What's the phrase there? A continuous open door there all the time, swinging door all the time at the 5th spot in the rotation. Yeah. But you want to have an opportunity to give some guys an opportunity that as we're going into the early part of the year, give some guys an opportunity to try to battle out and figure that spot out. And I think for the first month of the year, if it's not straightened out in spring training, I could definitely see the Cubs experimenting a little bit in April with their number 5 spot in the rotation.
Yeah, I can definitely see them doing that too. And like I said, it's when you can interchange so many parts, when you can put in different pieces or use them different ways. And, let's just say, for example, they use Montgomery in the 5 spot. Say he's tired, he gets run down. You have other people you can put in. You can put Anderson and you can put Cahill in to start, or even Justin Grimm, who honestly has been very good. But I'd even like to see him get a shot in the rotation. If they maybe, like I said, they try a 6-man because he did pretty well when he was in Texas and doing that before he got traded up and came to the Cubs. And pretty much put in the bullpen, but he's also been very good there, and I can't say anything bad about his service there. I mean, just for the sake of usage, I mean, he was getting sent down to AAA just for having, say like another lefty in the rotation, like, bringing up Ross Cup or something of that nature, when he was perching perfectly fine, and there's no other reason to send him down other than the fact that he's throwing with the wrong arm that they need. So, yeah, I mean, that number 5 spot, it's really great to have that much versatility and being able to not really have to worry about it, and that knowing that, no matter what we do, the odds are we're coming out ahead of our opponent. Because when you look at another team, like when I mentioned the Dodgers, who Pacoda's ranking first, just as an example for when they were in the playoffs against the Cubs, they threw 1, 2, 3 guys. You didn't use your number 4 and your number 5, and I'm not saying the Cubs did either, but at the same time, the Cubs still have guys in the bullpen that could do it, and that's huge, especially if you are in the playoffs and you're running Lester and his arm hurts. So you need to bring someone else in the second or third inning, and you need to go. You need to let them go 3 or 4, not just 1 in the third. That's really huge, and that's where they have the advantage over a lot of other teams. It's the depth, and that's the one spot that kills so many teams every year. The one thing that keeps them, no matter what they do, it keeps them out of the playoffs. It keeps them out of championship talk. Is bad bullpen. That is always the killer, and to not have to worry about that for really the second time in at least my life as far as the Cubs are concerned is really, really huge. I mean, to take that breath and say, you know what, we can just worry about something else now. It's really a fantastic feeling.
Exactly. It really is fantastic. For this team, the way they have this much depth, both in the bullpen and in the rotation, which, again, makes them an incredibly scary team going into this season. And as I look around this team, and look right now as far as position players are concerned, as we said earlier in the show, there's really no open spots as far as competition, let alone center field, with being the only exception. Pretty much everybody is set. We know what to expect with Rizzo and Russell and Bryant. You know what to expect with the guy from Jason Hayward, for that matter. But there are a couple of positions out there that I think are going to be very intriguing to watch over the course of this year. First of all, it's going to be Kyle Schwarber. Now, Kyle Schwarber is a guy who's shown tremendous pop in his bat when he was here a couple of years ago. He got an extended look, and then going into the postseason that year, had a tremendous home run against the Cardinals in that playoff series, in the division series. Last year, only played in 4 games, had that ugly ACL injury, ended up missing the entire season for that matter. Came back in the playoffs in the World Series. Excuse me, and I thought he was mighty impressive as far as his ability to play after missing all that time and have very little rehab time as far as playing in minor league games for that matter at the end of the year, and he was still able to hit around .412 in the playoffs. Now they're going to get a real chance now to see what this guy can do for a full 162. I'm really excited to see what Kyle Schwarber has this year.
I'd like to see it too, and I think it's fantastic that they've already shown a lot of faith in his rehab and his recovery and how well he did, not only in the series, but how far he came after his injury to be able to make the roster for the World Series, and after the World Series and the couple months since, to be going into spring training, going good, going healthy. I mean, still getting better. I mean, it's not just, 8 months, you don't got to worry about it anymore. As you've seen, it doesn't matter if it's ACL, MCL, doesn't matter if it's Tommy John or even a broken tibia. It nothing heals perfect, and it can be a crapshoot sometimes. But to see that he's doing as well as he is, to be medically cleared to play ball and now to medically cleared to play catcher, that's also huge because, again, you're talking about versatility. Joe Maddon's already said he's going to lead off. He's going to be starting in left. But, and personally, I think that's the better spot for him. I mean, obviously, because you've got a young stud like Wilson Contreras who will be catching full time. You got Miggy Montero backing him up. But you need an emergency guy. It's okay to have Schwarber there. I think, I don't know what you want to set the over-under on, but I'd say Schwarber maybe catches 7-ish games this year. I know that's not cool. A lot, but that's, it's kind of filling in a little bit where you need it. You know, he doesn't really need to be anyone's personal catcher because I'm more worried about the longevity of that knee. I mean, you can say it's as healthy as you want right now, but you start catching a couple games and it's, you know, starts wearing on you. You know, you catch and then you got to go into the outfield and run. And really, I'd rather see a long, healthy career with a nice knee that really doesn't get torqued the wrong way too much, especially, you know, as far as catching is concerned. I think he is a fantastic young player. You're right. He's got a lot of thunderous pop to his bat. I think that's something that Joe Madden not only sees but wants to take advantage of. Like I said, you know, wanting to bat him first, and then when it doesn't matter if you're, you know, going against a rookie or Clayton Kershaw. You know, when you know, come to play the Cubs and you got Schwarber, Bryant, Rizzo, Zobrist, Russell. It's, I mean, I hate to compare it to something as great as Murderers Row, but, you know, I mean, it really does, you know, look like a Yankees lineup in the early 1900s where, you know, it didn't matter who you were facing a fantastic bat. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, this lineup is just tremendous. I mean, the middle of the order, to have these two, just from the standpoint of having two big power hitting left-handed batters in Schwarber and Rizzo, I mean, that's just scary enough. I mean, in that Wrigley Field where the ball flies around all over the place, that's that. And then you have Bryant in there as well, a guy who could be an MVP candidate in his own right. You got another guy in Addison Russell who's one of the budding young superstars at shortstop in this game. I mean, it's just tremendous how much power, not just power, but also the ability to hit for average. A lot of guys who get their doubles, who get their singles, they're not afraid to move guys over. It's just a really well-balanced lineup from that standpoint.
It is. It's great because it doesn't matter, like you said, who you got hit. Yeah, you got some lefty power, you got some righty power. You have guys that can play small ball, and a lot of people don't like that. They don't like the singles, you know, because we live in a day and age where it's the 80-yard touchdown pass. That's what's sexy. The home run is sexy. Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of people want to see, and it's great, and that's fine. I know that's part of the game, but at the same time, you need to bunt, you need to move the runner over, and you've got a bunch of guys who can make that happen, even if it is just a single. World Series perfect example where Schwarber comes up, he singles, and then they're able to put in Almora for a pinch runner, and he steals second, and he's able to come in off another hit. It's, you know, just having that kind of, again, just versatility, and those people that you can substitute and put in every which way really, really helps, and that's such a pain for opposing managers and position players and pitchers alike, because, like you said, it doesn't matter who you hit. Yeah, you think Russell's like, okay, skinny little kid, he's quick, but he's a shortstop. But I don't know his exact number offhand, but I want to say he had at least 88, 90 ribbies last year. Mm-hmm. It's just immense. I mean, timely hitting, being able to do that. I know a lot of people get down on Hayward's hitting, but been working on it, and really, I know a lot of people say, but, you know, defensively, it just pans out. You can afford to have a bad bat in the lineup. It's not terrible by any means. He's definitely got more major league hits than I'm ever going to have. But, you know, and then it's just great to not have to worry about it because, yeah, you got Hayward in there, but when he's surrounded by Schwarber and Russell and Bryant or Wilson Contreras or Miggy Montgomery, whoever it might be, it really doesn't matter because the lineup is just so solid. And, yeah, the one position that a lot of people talk about is the center field with John
Center field, yeah, I was going to get to that, yeah.
It's just really a great competition. Well, I'll let you bring it up, and then we'll go.
Okay, no, you're going good there, but yeah, I wanted to get into center field as well because that's really a real competition right there between Almora Jr., who's only 22 years old. Kid's shown some shown some hitting prowess down there in spring training in Arizona. John Jay's a guy's been around a while. Kind of a base stealer, but a guy who also hasn't had a lot of playing time, let alone success in San Diego. So you got those two guys battling it out in spring training, and now I turn it over to you, sir. Take it over from there. Go ahead.
Well, all I can say about that position is that it was a long time coming. A lot of discussions that I've had with other baseball people or just other fans is that they wanted Dexter Fowler re-signed. And I said that really wasn't going to happen because they're so high on Almora. And they're, well, I don't know anything about Almora. He's in the minors. I'm like, trust me, he's going to work out. You know, he's a good hitter. He's coming along. You know, he's still young, like you said, 21, 22. But he's a speed guy. He's very defensive. And the plus, yeah, Dexter Fowler, good center fielder, really good hitter. And that's what you need at the top of your lineup. And now, yes, you got to change it up and have someone else at the top. But that's hard because they're, you know, setting the table in the MLB is a very, very important thing. You know, you can talk about, oh, I got, you know, Rizzo, you know, batting fourth or Zobrist fifth or however that lineup may work out. But if you don't have anyone on, a home run or a double isn't going to help anything because all it's going to do is either score one run instead of three or just get a guy on second before you get two more outs. So to have someone that's able to set the table is great. But then, you know, like I said, when they're putting Schwarber up there to set the plate, you don't have to worry about that as much. Defensively is why I love Albert Almora because he's not only a good base runner, but he is just lightning in the outfield, and I mean that by just absolute speed. He's a friggin' flash. You know, because you talk about the defensive soundness of Jason Hayward. He can catch, he can throw, and people worry about, oh, well, you know, we're putting Schwarber in left, and he's got the knee. Is he going to be as fast, as healthy? And that's the best part about Albert Almora is that he can cover center and half of left. You know, you don't got to worry about that. Because, I mean, I'm not saying he's going to catch absolutely everything out there. I mean, no one's that fast all the time. But, you know, it's that sort of cushion that, you know what, you don't have to worry about it that much because his sort of plus defense is going to assist other players and to make them better because they don't have to cover as far. You know, that's going to, like I said, that's going to save Schwarber's knee a lot of pain over the season, him not having to leg out something in the center because Almora is going to get there a lot faster and a lot easier. And at the same time, you know, you're just going to see a lot of flip-flopping, like you said, with John Jay. He unfortunately, he was a good ball player, and not that he's bad now, but his career really just hasn't panned out like anyone expected.
Right.
You know, he was expected to, you know, be that sort of, you know, hey, top prospect kind of guy is going to pan out, face of our organization, and that just really never happened. But that doesn't mean that he's not a bad ball player. It doesn't mean he can't be a role player. He'll get a good couple starts in center field, and he can cover some ground too. I think that Almora's a better hitter, a better center fielder, but there's nothing wrong with moving some guys around because, like we've talked about many times, it's a long season, 162 games. You're going to see John Jay in there subbing. You're going to see some guys moved around. You're going to see Baez at second, Zobrist moved to left field, or you're going to see Tommy La Stella in at third. You know, MVP or not, Chris Bryant isn't going to play 162 games. It's not the, you know, 1970s or 1980s. You know, no one's going to beat Cal Ripken's record anymore. It's just not going to happen because that's not how they manage baseball any longer. So, you know, you can say, you know, whatever you want about, you know, youth and, you know, you have to have someone starting all the time, but there's nothing wrong with having someone interchangeable and be able to bring them in. And on top of that, you know, experience is key, and the best experience for any player like Almora is going to be in the majors. So I never really fret about them letting go of Fowler because I knew, and as I've been saying, and a lot of people I've been saying it too still don't believe it, but I'm like, you know, you're going to see it. He's going to learn. He's going to do well, and you're going to be very happy with Albert Almora in center field.
So you feel very confident. Opening day on April the 2nd in St. Louis, Albert Almora was going to be the leadoff batter for this team. You think that he could be a good leadoff hitter for this team? You already illustrated, obviously, the outfield prowess that he has. So you feel confident in him in that spot?
I would, but at the same time, he's not going to lead off. Schwarber's going to lead off. Yeah, Madden's already said that Schwarber's going to be leading off, at least the games that he plays. So you could see Almora leading off, but I think it's going to be more of a Schwarber-Zobrist kind of lead-off sort of batting. I know they like to bat Zobrist either second
That's going to be
or
interesting.
even through sixth, but you're going to see a lot more of Schwarber at the top. Excuse me. And,
okay.
I mean, there's plenty of guys you can fit in. Because like you said, when you talk about like Hayward or even Baez or Elmore, you want a speed guy. You want someone who's gonna, make sure you get it on, hit the ball, square it up, get it on the ground, just get on base, set the table, let someone else get you in. And Elmore could do that, but it's, versatility, wanting to move guys around and making sure that it's not, top heavy with power or, bottom heavy with speed in the lineup. I think that Elmore is probably going to be batting a lot more seventh or eighth, not because of, he's the worst batter or anything like that.
Right.
But just because of, where else can you stick someone sometimes when you talk about a lineup with Rizzo and Zobrist and anyone else, because that's what they're trying to make sure of, is that we have our best bats get the most opportunities, because sometimes you only get 3, maybe 4 at bats in a game. So when you do that, you want to make sure that those bats are Schwarber, Bryant, Rizzo, Zobrist.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you give yourself the best opportunity to win.
That's going to be very interesting to see if Schwarber is the leadoff hitter for this team opening day. I mean, you think of him more as a power guy, but he's going to get that chance now to lead off. I wouldn't be shocked if they maybe go with Ben Zobrist maybe more often over the course of the year as leadoff hitter, just based on his veteran experience at the plate. That savvy guy to lead off, not a bad thing either. If Addison Russell hit for a better average, I would love to see him lead off top of the lineup, but he's got to pick up the batting average just a little bit more. But that's going to be again very, very intriguing to see someone like some of these power hitters at the top of this lineup now for the Cubs.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about, usually it's the speed guys who are leading off first, second, but then you look at teams like Cincinnati with Billy Hamilton, who's had so many struggles last year at the beginning of the year hitting. He was just 1 for the universe last year, like maybe just something crazy like 1 for 33 to start the season. You can't have that either. Yeah, he's fast, but if he's not getting on base, what does it help? So, yeah, I'd love to see someone like Elmore in the leadoff spot, but it's just a completely different beast. And there's nothing wrong with having a little pop, a la, oh, golly, I forget the year. I want to say like 95-ish, 96, Baltimore Orioles, Brady Anderson had like 40 homers in the leadoff spot that season. So it's, there's nothing wrong with a little pop in the beginning of the lineup because, Fowler had a good couple of homers this past season in the leadoff spot. Because at the same time, then you're talking about, just coming back up to the top, because when you have, maybe you start an inning in the 7 or 8 hole, so you have, Elmore hitting and then Contreras and then right back up to the top. You could talk about a 1 or a 2, setting the plate for Bryant or Rizzo, but then you're talking about a 7 or an 8, setting the plate for Schwarber back up when you go back to the top again.
Yeah, that could definitely work out that way. And when you go into the American League ballpark, things even out there as well. You could put Almora back into the 9th spot, give him kind of that taste of being someone that could turn a lap over. So you could do that as well. And even in the National League Park, you can experiment as well. You could move your pitcher up into the 8th spot, move Almora down to the 9th spot if you want to do that as well. So Cubs have some pitchers that can hit the baseball as well, like Arrieta. Obviously, we've seen him hit some home runs in the past. But for this Chicago Cub team going into this year, as we only got about 5 minutes left in the show, folks, this is a team that comes in here. Rob and I both agree probably their biggest strength going into this year has to be their bullpen and their starting rotation. They have a number of guys that they can go to out of that bullpen that can shorten the game, that can shut down the game and allow this team to come back at any point in time. The starting rotation is very, very good. Top 3 guys, Lester Hendricks and Arrieta, as good as it gets. Lackey, a veteran guy there in the middle of this as well. Very good starting rotation for the Cubs this year. Offensively, a team that's going to have a lot of power. It's going to hit for a lot of power, hit for a lot of average. Very intriguing situation at the top of the order there as they're trying to develop a guy, Almora, for later on, and they're going to have either Schwarber or Zobrist lead off. But overall, Rob, I think my impression for this Cubs team going into this year, even after this conversation, has not changed. This is a team that is primed and ready to challenge, not saying they will definitely win it all again this year, but they're primed and ready to challenge to win another World Series this year.
I concur 110% because really, I mean, you're the team to beat. You won the series. You could say that they've done good or they came far, but they never quite made it. They putted out against the Mets, whatever the situation may have been. But at the end of the day, they really are the team to beat. And if I could, just be a fan and a meatball for a moment rather than a writer as a Cubs fan, I'd say bring it, because that's what it's got to be. They don't have to prove anything. They're the series champs. It's everyone else who has to, the Cubs don't have to bring their A game, but everyone else has to prove that they're worthy this season.
They do. It's going to be a lot of fun. Rob, I want to thank you so much, man, for coming aboard again. As always, looking forward to talking to you later down the road as we go throughout the course of the season.
Absolutely, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Once again, thank Robert Villarreal for joining us today. And we'll catch you all again on Tuesday night right here on the Open Mic program. Take care, everybody. Follow the Open Mic program on Twitter at OpenMicNJ and on Facebook, facebook.com/Open Mic Program.